I thought I'd seen every kind of trouble on Helix 7, until a human girl shattered 3 armored craft soldiers with her bare hands. I've been working security on Station Helix 7 for nearly 6 cycles now, and I've witnessed a lot. Brawls between Drenthian cadets over mating displays? Check. Methane breathers accidentally wandering into oxygen sectors and passing out? Double check. Aquan attempting to smuggle live prey into the dormitories? Don't even get me started on that catastrophe. But humans were something else entirely. My name is Voron, and I am of Relion. We aren't the largest species in the Galactic Council, not by far, but we are dependable, methodical, and make excellent security officers because we remain calm under pressure. We follow protocols and have 4 eyes, yes, 4, which makes surveillance far easier when you can monitor multiple corridors at once without turning your head. Station Helix 7 houses the Galactic Naval Academy, the most prestigious military training facility in this sector. Cadets arrive from 217 different species, all squeezed into one massive, rotating station orbiting a beautiful but essentially useless gas giant. The view is breathtaking. The social dynamics, however, are utterly chaotic. The Academy prides itself on integration, training future officers to collaborate across species. A noble goal, in theory. In practice, it means territorial displays, dominance hierarchies, and sometimes even full-scale riots over insults to someone's ancestral grounds. Humans had only been members of the Council for about 30 standard years when this incident occurred. They were still newcomers, learning where they fit in the complex pecking order of galactic civilization. Most species saw them as fragile mammals, soft skin, no natural armor, no claws, no venom sacs, no exoskeleton. Easily broken. Vulnerable to threats that would barely bother a proper species. The human cadets mostly kept to themselves. At any given time, there were perhaps 40 of them on the station, out of nearly 3,000 total cadets. They focused on their studies, remained polite, and avoided causing problems. Some of the other species interpreted this behavior as weakness, an open invitation. I had noticed the tension building for weeks. The craft cadets, in particular, had started pushing the humans around. At first, it was minor, cutting ahead of them at the nutrition dispensers, taking their preferred training gear, bumping into them in the corridors, then acting as if it were the humans' fault. The humans never pushed back. They simply smiled, those strange, flexible-faced smiles, and moved on. I remember thinking that it was a smart approach. Keep your head down, get through the academy, earn your commission, and move forward with your life. A solid plan. What I did not understand, what none of us understood at the time, was that humans do not rely on a single strategy. They have something else, a kind of switch that flips once a certain line is crossed. I was about to find out exactly where that line was. And honestly, I wish someone had warned me beforehand. The Crother are, without question, among the most physically intimidating species in the Academy. They stand close to 8 feet tall, built like walking slabs of armored muscle. Their skin has a thick, ridged texture capable of deflecting most small-caliber projectiles. They have 6 limbs, used for movement, and 2 massive arms ending in hands strong enough to crush steel pipes. Their homeworld has 3 times standard gravity, which means they move through the station as if heavy training weights have just been removed. They are also, and I say this with all due respect to any Crother reading this report, capable of being extremely unpleasant when they choose to be. The 3 involved here were named Drar, Venzak, and Korvath. Not exactly agreeable individuals. They had already accumulated 2 formal reprimands for excessive force during combat training and 1 unofficial warning for intimidating other cadets in shared spaces. However, they were effective soldiers, tactically competent, and the Academy often overlooks personal issues if performance scores are high enough. Their preferred target, for reasons I still do not fully understand, was a human cadet named Marcus Webb. Marcus was, to put it carefully, not physically imposing. He stood around 5.5 feet tall, weighed maybe 140 pounds at most, and carried a nervous energy that made him seem even smaller. He wore standard-issue Academy glasses, as his species apparently had not yet corrected vision genetically. He was enrolled in the engineering track, not combat, which meant most of his time was spent with datapads and circuit boards rather than weapons. In short, he was exactly the kind of individual bullies across the galaxy instinctively single out. I was making my evening rounds through the training deck, which was mostly empty at that hour. Most cadets were either at evening nutrition or in their quarters. I heard voices echoing from one of the auxiliary combat rooms, the type used for hand-to-hand training. Something in their tone made my sensory spines react. I should have gone in immediately. Protocol is clear, intervene at the first sign of conflict. But there was a problem. I had intervened with these 3 before, and it always ended the same way. They would withdraw, file a complaint about security harassment, and their family connections would complicate my work for the following week. So I hesitated. I positioned myself where I could observe through the doorway without drawing attention. Marcus was pressed back against the padded training wall. All three Crother were closing in on him in a semicircle, cutting off every possible escape. This was not going to end well. Drar was speaking, as expected. He was the leader of this group, the one who always felt the need to assert himself. "You stepped on my foot earlier, human," he rumbled, his voice like stones grinding together. In the corridor outside the quantum mechanics lecture hall. Marcus's reply was thin and unsteady. I didn't mean to. It was crowded, and I apologized right away." "You said it was fine." "I lied," Drar replied, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "I wanted to see if you were foolish enough to believe me." The other two Crother spread out farther, blocking any remaining path out. Then Venzak cracked his knuckles, which for a Crother sounds like breaking tree branches. Corvith simply stared, his four eyes bright with anticipation. I noticed several other cadets near the entrance behind me, a pair of Theri, one Vine, and what appeared to be a Korathian observer. None of them stepped forward. They only watched, caught in that familiar fascination species display when they sense something bad is coming but cannot look away. I reached for my comm unit. I should have reported it. Called for backup. Followed procedure. But my hand paused. If I intervened then, it would be my word against theirs. Marcus would likely be too frightened to testify clearly. The Crother would claim it was a misunderstanding, just cadets talking. Their families would complain. My supervisor would give me that look, the one that suggested I was creating issues where none existed. I am not proud of this moment. I am recording it here because honesty matters in official reports, even when it reflects poorly on you. I did not make the call. I only watched. Marcus tried to shift sideways, attempting to slip past Venzak on the left. The Crother caught him with one massive hand, fingers wrapping entirely around Marcus's upper arm. He lifted the human off the ground as if he weighed nothing, then slammed him backfirst into the padded wall. The impact made a sound, softer than expected. "Thanks to the padding," I noted. But Marcus's face twisted in pain as the air whooshed from his lungs. "Where do you think you're going, little mammal?" Zach growled. Dukther moved in, using two arms to pin Marcus's shoulders to the wall while his legs held him off the ground. Marcus's feet flailed uselessly. "Please," Marcus gasped. "I do not want trouble." "Too late," Draxthor replied, and swung his reinforced right fist, designed by Kraft for combat, directly into Marcus's midsection. A choking, wet gasp escaped Marcus, something I had never heard before. His body tried to curl, but Drewer's other arms kept him flat. That's when I began moving forward, and heard a voice behind me. "Hey!" Just one word. Quiet, calm, cold as vacuum. Everyone turned toward the doorway. A human female stood there. If my readings were correct, she was about 5 feet 6 inches, dark hair in a tight ponytail, wearing the academy training uniform with reinforced joints for combat. Her skin was tanned, knuckles and forearms scarred, clearly from fighting, not academics. Her name, I would learn later, was Mira. At that moment, all I registered was her expression. Humans have a certain look that translates across species as pure, concentrated danger, narrowed eyes, set jaw, lips pressed thin. Every muscle in her body was coiled, ready to strike. She stepped into the room deliberately, without rushing or hesitation, movement with total purpose. I said, "Hey." She repeated, louder, "You three, get your hands off him." Druth laughed, a grinding, mechanical sound. He did not release Marcus, only glanced over his shoulder with two eyes while the other two remained on his victim. "This does not concern you, female," he said, emphasizing contempt. "Go back to whatever you were doing." Mira stopped about 15 feet away, close enough to act, far enough to maneuver. Tactical spacing. "That is my friend you are holding," she said calmly. "So yes, it concerns me. Let him go and we can all walk away without anyone getting hurt." Zach snorted. "Your friend? This pathetic little creature? And what exactly do you think you'll do about it, tiny human? You're even smaller than he is." It was true. Mira likely weighed 130 pounds at most, compared to the Croth, each around 400 pounds of solid muscle and armored hide. She looked like an insect. A particularly stubborn, suicidal insect. Corvith now fully turned toward her, all four eyes focused. "You cannot be serious. Go away before you get hurt." Mira tilted her head and I swear I saw her smile, not friendly. Predator's smile, just before striking. "Hurt," she said. "Oh, someone is definitely going to get hurt. I'm just deciding whether to break your knees first or your elbows." Drugar released Marcus, who collapsed to the floor, gasping. All three Kroth now focused on Mira, seeing her as the more interesting target. They spread out slightly, encircling her just as they had with Marcus. "You've made a serious mistake, human," Drewer said, cracking his neck like snapping cables. "We were only going to rough him up. But we are going to break." Mira rolled her shoulders, loosening up, then raised her fists in a fighting stance. Her movements didn't match any human martial style I recognized. "Yeah," she said. "Get in line." I should have called for backup then. I really should have. Druth moved first, his second mistake. His first mistake was assuming Mira was bluffing. He lunged forward with his primary right arm, attempting to grab her torso and lift her off the ground, the same way Venzak had grabbed Marcus. It was a classic intimidation tactic, one that worked on nearly every species in the academy. Mira, however, was nowhere near where his hand landed. She dropped low, faster than seemed possible, sliding beneath his reach with a speed that made my 4 eyes struggle to follow. As she moved under him, she thrust her fist upward into the soft joint connecting Drar's primary arm to his torso. The impact was remarkable. A deep thud echoed, immediately followed by Drar's roar of pain. CRA have thick, armored skin capable of stopping bullets. But joints remain vulnerable, and Mira didn't strike the armor itself, she targeted the gap between plates, driving her knuckles into the sensitive nerve cluster located there. Drar staggered backward, his arm hanging limp and useless. The room fell silent, save for his labored breathing. Mira straightened, rolling her shoulders casually, as if she were merely warming up. "One down," she said calmly. Venzak and Korvath exchanged a glance, clearly reassessing their assumptions about human fragility. Then Venzak snarled and charged. For a craft, he was fast, covering the distance in maybe 2 seconds, all 400 pounds of him moving like a freight hauler. Any other species would have been flattened. Mira sidestepped at the last moment, allowing his momentum to carry him past. Seizing one of his secondary arms, she planted her foot and used his own forward motion to slam him face-first into the padded floor. The impact shook the entire room. "Two down," Mira announced, though Venzak was already scrambling upright, shaking his head to clear it. Korvath was more cautious, circling to her left in an attempt to flank while Venzak recovered. A smart tactic, use numbers, attack from multiple angles. Mira maintained both opponents in her peripheral vision, rotating smoothly to hold her defensive stance. Her breathing was elevated but controlled, focused. Korvath feinted high with his primary arms. Mira shifted to block, only for him to strike low with his secondary arms, aiming to sweep her legs. She jumped straight up, letting his attack pass just an inch below her feet. While she was airborne, I still can't explain the physics of what happened next. Mira twisted her body mid-flight and kicked out with both legs, striking Korvath square in his central eye cluster. His head snapped back as he howled, clutching his face. Mira landed in a crouch and immediately rolled forward as Venzak tried to grab her from behind. She came up inside his reach, too close for him to apply his strength effectively, and delivered a rapid sequence of strikes to his midsection. 3 punches, each aimed at a different pressure point. Zach doubled over, wheezing. The other cadets at the doorway were making noises, shocked gasps. One of the Senhari cursed in his native language. The Vulcan had started recording on his personal device. I remained frozen, struggling to process what I was seeing. Drather recovered enough function in his arm to rejoin the fight. Roaring with rage and pain, all 3 attackers converged on Mira at once, finally coordinating their efforts. By normal rules, this should have ended it, 3 against 1, massive size advantage, and limited space to maneuver. But humans, and I can't stress this enough, do not follow typical biological rules under adrenaline. Mira went low again, grabbed Benzak's leg, and pulled hard. He went down. She used his falling body as a springboard to launch herself at Drather. She wrapped her arm around his thick neck, locked her legs around his torso, and squeezed. Drather thrashed, trying to shake her off. Korvath grabbed her leg, but she held on with one arm and punched him in the already damaged eye cluster with her free hand, once, twice, 3 times. He released her, stumbling backward. Drather finally managed to throw her against the wall. The impact should have broken bones. She hit the floor, rolled, and came up bleeding from a cut above her eyebrow. Blood ran down the side of her face. And she was smiling. "That all you got?" she asked, breathing hard but steady on her feet. All 3 attackers were also breathing heavily. Drather's arm was still partially disabled. Korvath could barely see through his injured eyes. Benzak was favoring his midsection where she had struck the pressure points. They glanced at each other, then at her, then back at each other. I could see them calculating. Yes, they might eventually overpower her with enough effort. But she would inflict serious damage first, and she wasn't going to stop fighting until someone was unconscious or dead. Drather made his decision and charged once more, with the other two following his lead. That's when I finally remembered my own responsibility. And just then, the rest of the human cadets arrived. They came through the doorway like a wave of compact, determined predators. There were 6 of them, by galactic standards, not physically imposing. The tallest barely reached 6 feet, and the heaviest likely weighed around 180 pounds. Yet they moved with precision and speed. 2 of them targeted Drather, striking him high and low at the same time. Another grabbed Corvatha's arm, twisting it into a joint lock I recognized from advanced combat training. The remaining 3 formed a protective perimeter around Mira and Marcus. That was when my brain fully rebooted. I was wearing a security uniform. I activated my comm unit. Security emergency. Deck 7. Multiple cadets engaged in a physical altercation, requesting immediate backup and medical response. Then I stepped into the fray, drawing my sonic disruptor from my belt. I fired 3 warning bursts into the air. The high-pitched shriek finally cut through the chaos. Everyone stop now. To their credit, the humans froze immediately. Professional discipline overrode their protective instincts. The craft took a few more seconds, but eventually, they stopped struggling as well. I could hear footsteps echoing down the corridor. Backup was arriving, along with medical personnel. The scene that greeted them was unforgettable. All 3 craft were on the ground, breathing heavily, covered in bruises and injuries. Drather's arm hung uselessly. Corvatha's face was swelling around a damaged eye cluster. Benzak clutched his ribs. The humans, however, were still standing. Yes, they were breathing hard. Yes, Mira had a cut above her eye and probably bruised ribs from hitting the wall. A few others had scrapes and emerging bruises, but they remained alert, ready to continue if necessary. Marcus sat against the wall, catching his breath, staring at Mira with complete disbelief. Chief Medical Officer Talith rushed in with her team, immediately beginning triage. She looked first at the craft, then at the humans, and finally at me. "What in the name of the Founders happened here?" she demanded. I opened my mouth, then closed it, searching for a way to explain this that would make sense in an official report. "The humans happened," I finally said, probably the least helpful response I could give, but also the most accurate. Talith began examining Corv's eyes while her assistants attended to the other injuries. She muttered under her breath in her native tongue, words that sounded like medical profanity. More security officers arrived, separating everyone and taking preliminary statements. The crowd at the doorway had grown to around 20 cadets, all staring with wide eyes and open mouths. One of the Centauri observers turned to his companion and whispered, "Did that really just happen?" His friend only nodded, still too shocked to speak. The formal inquiry was held the following morning in Conference Room 3, notorious as the Academy's disciplinary hearing space. I was called to testify first, having witnessed most of the incident. Commander Thralis, a strict Corvani officer with 20 years of service, presided over the hearing. She listened to my account with her usual stern expression, occasionally making notes on her data pad. Next came the cadets. The craft went first. Drather, his arm now secured in a regenerative brace, attempted to frame the incident as mutual combat, claiming self-defense against aggressive humans. His story quickly unraveled when security footage from the training deck was reviewed, clearly showing them cornering Marcus first. Commander Thralis was unimpressed. When it was Mira's turn, she entered with the same composed, deliberate presence she had maintained during the fight. The cut above her eyebrow had already been closed with medical adhesive. She took her seat, placed her hands neatly on the table, and waited. Cadet Marathurkis spoke first. "You sent 3 craft cadets to the medical bay. Each of them outweighed you by several hundred pounds. Can you explain how that occurred?" Mira gave a small shrug. "They were harming my friend. I stopped them by engaging all 3 at once. They didn't leave me many alternatives, ma'am." Thurkis leaned in slightly. "Your record states that you were raised on Hadley's Hope, one of the early human colony worlds, classified as frontier territory. Is that correct?" "Yes, ma'am." "It also notes that your father worked as a security contractor, and your mother served as a combat medic. You were brought up in what the file describes as a difficult environment." Mira's expression remained steady. "Hadley's Hope had recurring issues with raiders and dangerous wildlife. You either learn to protect yourself, or you don't last long. My parents made sure I learned." "I understand." Thurkis tapped her data pad. Several human cadets responded to the incident. They arrived from different sections of the station. How did they know to assist? For the first time, Mira allowed a faint smile. "We have a shared communication channel. It's for emergencies only. I activated it when I saw what was happening to Marcus." "So you requested support before taking on 3 opponents by yourself?" "No, ma'am. I requested support while engaging them. I can manage more than one task at a time. Turkuz appeared to suppress what might have been a smile. The craft cadets claimed they did not understand human group response behavior. They believed Marcus was alone and without protection. Merer's expression hardened. Then they learned something important about humans today. We do not leave our own behind. Ever. If you harm one of us, you face all of us. That is not a behavioral concept or a tactical habit. That is simply who we are. The hearing continued for another hour, though the outcome was never really in doubt. The Croth received formal reprimands and probation for starting the assault. Mira and the other humans were given minor citations for overreacting, though those were largely symbolic. When it ended, I saw Marcus waiting outside the conference room. He practically leapt at Mira as she came out, half thanking, half apologizing. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "It could have killed you." Mira tapped him lightly on the shoulder. "They were going to hurt you, Marcus. Of course I had to act. What kind of friend would I be if I didn't?" Marcus looked like he might cry but settled for a tight, heartfelt hug instead. Word spread quickly on a station like Helix 7. By dinner, every cadet knew the story. In the nutrition dispensary, the humans suddenly had more personal space and received respectful nods from species who had previously ignored them. So, what did I take away from all of this? Several things, actually. First, humans are remarkably poor at assessing threats rationally. Any rational species would have examined the 3 ships, calculated the risks, and pursued a diplomatic solution. Humans, however, tend to witness a friend in danger and react with violence immediately, treating it as a first option rather than a last resort. It is both impressive and entirely extreme. Secondly, human pack bonding is serious business. We believed we had a clear understanding of social species behavior, but we were mistaken. When a human decides you are part of their group, they will go to extreme lengths for you. I've seen reports from their colony worlds. Humans do not calculate acceptable losses when it comes to protecting their own. Most importantly, never assume that physical size determines a human's combat ability. Their adrenaline response can push them beyond what standard biology would predict. They ignore pain, shrug off injuries, and continue fighting until the threat is neutralized or they are incapacitated. The incident on Helix 7 changed everything. Casual bullying vanished almost immediately. Once other species realized humans will fight back fiercely, use any means necessary, and call on allies, respect replaced arrogance. Mira became something of a legend. Cadets from other species would point her out in the corridors, whispering, some in fear, most in admiration. Even a few combat track instructors invited her to demonstrate human fighting techniques in advanced classes.